Brad and very clean. Yeah.
Hurricane Brad.
Yeah. Now, just to let everybody know, if you do have questions, you can private chat them to either H. Foister or Ceiling Cat, and we will get those answered. If you're listening from somewhere else and you have questions, you can send a question to the paranormal view at gmail.com, and we will get that answered for you. So, you write a lot of your books on places where you have investigated.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how did you come about Gacy's ghost?
Well, it's almost the perfect segue from what you were just talking about. I was doing a convention in Texas last spring in Conroe, Texas, the Bayou City Paranormal Symposium, and I was sitting at a table next to Brad and Barry, and we're friends. We go back a ways, mainly because we have a shared love of ghosts and of Gettysburg, and so we can talk about those two things all day long. And I'd just written a book about a haunted serial killer's house, the Fox Hollow Farm property in Indiana. And so Brad said, I have my own serial killer encounter. And he said, John Wayne Gacy is now my personal nemesis. Well, he made a TV show about it. It's called Strange Curiosity. You can see it on Amazon Prime. It's well worth looking at. And it turns out that John Wayne Gacy is believed to haunt a movie theater in this small town, Illinois. Which, instantly I wanted to know, well, how does that happen? How does one of the most prolific and awful serial murderers in American history end up in a movie theater, right? There was no connection. So the story was that one of Gacy's attorneys owned several of his paintings. John Wayne Gacy painted a number of pictures, primarily of clowns and things of that nature, while he was on death row, which he then sold. And some of them were kept by his attorney, who stored them in a wooden armoire, which is essentially just a cabinet. And the armoire went to our movie theater in Auburn, Illinois, in the care of a gentleman called Robin Terry. Robin and his wife Norma soon began to have strange things happen around the movie theater, which is also their home. So it's a refurbed old movie theater where they live upstairs. They started to get all this strange stuff going on, so they brought in a couple of mediums. And the mediums said, we're getting the name John Wayne. And Robin was like, that's great. How cool is that? The Duke. The king of the Western is haunting my house. And then the medium said, yeah, but why would John Wayne be dressed as a clown? And so it turns out that Gacy seemed to have this attachment to the armoire which had been used to store his paintings, and appears to do so to this day. And when I heard that story, I just had to go look into it myself, which is how the book came about.
So you went and
Well, in the
investigated.
book, you asked the same question that I asked, which is, the paintings aren't in there now. Why is he still attached to the armoire?
That's a great question. So a lot of people come to the art theater. They get a lot of visitors. If John Wayne Gacy loved anything, it was attention. He was a supreme narcissist, as indeed many serial killers are. So he liked to be the center of the spotlight. He liked people to talk about him. And so as soon as he started to get interaction, as soon as Brad Kling put his story on TV, the activity started to increase. And people came over there with the express intent of trying to communicate with John Wayne Gacy, which I think appeals to an ego that big.
That makes really good sense, too, because I remember the stories of the police trying to pin him with those crimes. And he would interact with them all of the time and egg them on, so to speak.
You're right, he did. In fact, he knew he was being tailed. He drove at 90 miles an hour through the streets of Chicago The cops didn't pull him over for that because they were trying to land him for this much bigger crime, of course. He would go to a bar and then come sit with the detectives tailing him and buy them drinks and dinner, and he would say the creepiest things. When he was asked, why do you dress as a clown for public events, he told one of the cops, because a clown can get away with murder. The sheer arrogance of it. He actually tried. I mean, this really displays Gacy in, I think, one of the most understandable ways. If you want to get to the core of the man, this comment does it. But he insisted till his dying day that the 28 bodies that were found underneath his house, it was either 28 or 29, were nothing to do with him. He said, a lot of people had access to that crawl space under my house. And then he said, if I'm guilty of anything, it's running a cemetery without a license. I mean, just unbelievable.
Wow.
So that level of hubris, that level of arrogance, I think kind of explains why he would still be showing up at a place like the R Theater today. Whatever your beliefs about the afterlife may be, if there is any form of judgment, then he has a vested interest in delaying that as long as he possibly can.
Oh, sure. And it would also, his arrogance would explain why he's at fists with the Klieg's, one would think.
Well, Brad is one of the most type A individuals you could ever wish to meet. He's a lovely man, but still, he's a full-on guy. And so he was not averse. He's also a family man, so I think that the idea of John Wayne Gacy, just the very idea of what he did, offended Brad, insulted him deeply. And so Brad was not beyond taunting him and provoking him at all. And I had Brad Skype in when I was there. I was up on the balcony at the Art Theater alone in the middle of a thunderstorm, which was about as theatrical as it could get, right? And I had Brad Skyping in and just taunting and ripping into John Wayne Gacy in an attempt to get him to come out and interact. And Brad is kind of like his kryptonite, multiple mediums that have visited the R said John Wayne Gacy loves attention and he detests Brad Kling, which Brad's fine with. He loves that. Brad's rant was so epic, I put it in the book.
Yeah.
I had to put a warning. It's the first time I've ever put a disclaimer in one of my books, like, warning, the language in this next chapter, some of the things that are said, you may want to skip this if you're sensitive, because Brad just went nuclear. I mean, like, when I was typing it up, I broke the F key on my keyboard.
Ooh. Which leads me to another question, because provocation of a spirit, and how to do it correctly and safely, so that I can't imagine that John Wayne Gacy would go after the Klieg brothers, but certainly anybody who was friends with them, he might be trying to do that just to get back at them, wouldn't you think?
Yeah.
What do you do?
The first thing I'd like to say when it comes to provocation is I don't advocate that 99% of the time. I don't think it's appropriate to use blindly. I think that you should treat spirits with respect, as you should treat living people with respect. Essentially, that's what I believe they are, though in a different form. So, but I've made exceptions in a couple of cases, and both of those cases, I was dealing with a haunting that centered upon a serial killer. And so, if you're the kind of individual that would torture and murder young men or young people, I have no respect for you at all. I have no time for you at all. So I feel fully justified in that case in adopting the harder line. There is no... We run into all these cases where people are scratched and pushed and undergo physical symptoms, but it would have made for a much better scary story if that had been true. But I write the truth. I write about what happens. And we didn't get any of that in the wake of the provocation of John Wayne Gacy at all. So he seems to like to hang out in the shadows quite a lot at the R Theater. He likes to watch people, and he likes to hear what they're saying about him. So he seems to be very voyeuristic. And he's most commonly encountered in the huge garage, which was the old auditorium, on a balcony that's about 20 to 25 feet up in the air in there.
Wow. I got a question from the chat room, and it's from Tabby. And she wants to know, as an EMT, what is the most unnerving paranormal situation you have encountered to date? And did that situation change the way you look at the afterlife?
Is that from Patty, you said?
No, it's from Tabby.
Caddy, I'm sorry. Caddy, so the answer is none. And I'll tell you why. As a paramedic, I've never had a paranormal experience as a paramedic on the job. And the reason I think is that I am very focused on my scene control, scene management, and I'm very focused on my patient, on assessing them, devising a treatment plan. So I'm working at maximum mental capacity as a paramedic. There could be a troop of headless horsemen tap dancing behind me and I might not notice. I've run into other medics, though, and other field providers, firefighters, and cops. We talk to them on the show Paranormal 911 all the time, that do have strange things happen. But for me personally, I'm almost in my own zone or bubble, which the clock starts ticking as soon as I arrive on a 911 scene, and I'm always focused upon that, on moving things forward, stabilizing my patient, and then getting them to definitive care. So I'm sorry, it's not a great answer in the context of the paranormal, but my focus is always the patient and my fellow responders, and I don't have much more bandwidth beyond that. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
absolutely, and
yeah.
rather reassuring to that the paramedics are focused that much, and it makes sense. Yeah.
I do have one really bad habit, though. I'll share that with people, and this is true whenever I go into somebody's home. I'm always, if there is a bookcase, I'm always looking at the spines of the books to see what people are reading. Like, I can't help it.
Yeah,
But
I would do the same thing with music. Always looking at somebody's record collection or their DVD collections.
Huh.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
You know a person by their
Yeah, that was a great question, though. If there are any more, I'd love to interact more with you guys.
Yes.
Shoot them, and we'll talk about it.
If anybody else has questions, you can private chat them to either H. Foister or Ceiling Cat. We will give them right over and let Richard answer them for you.